All right, we're in the book of 1 Samuel, chapter number 19, and we're actually going to try to do 19 and 20. It's several verses, but I think we can make it through both of them. It'll be 66 verses. But here in chapter 19, previous chapters we've seen a lot of things going on with Saul and David, and Saul continues to hate David even worse and worse, while Saul's son Jonathan loves David. They're real good friends. So here in chapter 19, beginning in verse 1, and Saul spake to Jonathan his son, and to all his servants, that they should kill David. And, that's been his whole desire, really, since God removed his spirit from him and placed his spirit on David. But Saul would not do what God had shared. And so God is taking the kingdom away from him. And now it's been it's going to take a little while. It'll be a few years before it all transpires and takes place, but eventually David will become king. But right now, Saul is even telling his son Jonathan, even though he knows the relationship that Jonathan and David have, he's telling him and all of his servants that they should kill David. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David. And Jonathan told David, saying, Saul my father seeketh to kill thee. Now therefore I pray thee, take heed to thyself until the morning, and abide in a secret place, and hide thyself. So pretty much from about this point on, David is having to hide. And now he's going to hide in the wilderness and caves and around different places to keep Saul from killing him. In chapter 18 we read where that Saul threw a javelin at him twice already and missed him. But, God has anointed David king. Now, he's going to make it to being king. But it still doesn't stop Saul from wanting to kill him. And Jonathan is going and sharing with David all that his father has said, because David is such a special friend. Him and David have pretty much just bonded with their friendship, such close friendship that he's going to go against his father's orders to help save David. And he tells David that he needs to hide in a secret place. And he says in verse 3, and I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where thou art, and I will commune with my father of thee, and what I see I will tell thee. So, he's sharing with David, you're going to have to hide. And now I'll go out into the field tomorrow with my father, and I'm going to question him about what his intentions are. And whatever he shares with me, that's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you all about it so that you'll know what to expect. And Jonathan spake good of David unto Saul his father, and said unto him, let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he hath not sinned against thee, and because his works have been to thee-ward very good. David has done nothing but try to help Saul. Playing his harp, fighting battles, whatever he needs to do, he's followed the orders of the king. He hasn't ceased from that. But yet, last chapter 18 we read where the people were saying they were complimenting Saul and David, but they were only accounting to Saul thousands and to David 10,000s. And this really upset Saul. Now they're cheering him on more than they are me. And so he's desiring to kill him. He doesn't want to lose his fame. For he did put his life in his hand, and slew the Philistine, and the Lord wrought a great salvation for all Israel. Thou sawest it, and didst rejoice. Wherefore then wilt thou sin against innocent blood to slay David without a cause? So Jonathan's asking Saul, David went out and slew the huge Philistine, Goliath, when nobody else would. All of you rejoiced, and he's telling Saul, you even rejoiced. It brought great salvation to all of Israel because that one person was killed, the one that they were so afraid of. If you remember when we read that back in about chapter 16 or 17, where we read about that, and he said, nobody would go out. They were all afraid. They were shaking in their boots because of Goliath when he would come out and speak. And they were still shaking even when David went out. They were probably not expecting David to return. But David was trusting in the Lord. And Jonathan is reminding his father of that. So now he says, why are you going to sin against innocent blood and slay David? Why? And Saul hearkened unto the voice of Jonathan, and Saul sware, as the Lord liveth, he shall not be slain. So it's like kind of, after Jonathan talks with him, he kind of maybe repents just a little bit. Well, maybe I shouldn't slay him. And Jonathan called David, and Jonathan showed him all those things, and Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as in times past. So here he is. He's brought David right into the presence of Saul. But here we go again. Verse 8. And there was war again, and David went out and fought with the Philistines and slew them with a great slaughter, and they fled from him. Here's David winning great battles for all of Israel. The Philistines are fleeing again because David has killed a whole bunch of them. But it doesn't set well with Saul. And the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul as he sat in his house with his javelin in his hand, and David played with his hand. Here's David sitting here playing his harp, and here's Saul over here with his javelin in his hand. When am I going to have the opportunity to sling this thing? And that's all, because of the goodness of David. He was a good-hearted person. God even said so. God said David was a man after God's own heart. So, but Saul has evil. He's let the devil take over him. And he's got evil upon him because he's wanting to kill David. And Saul sought to smite David even to the wall with the javelin, but he slipped away out of Saul's presence, and he smote the javelin into the wall. And David fled and escaped that night. He's wanting to pin David to the wall with that javelin. Now, he's not wanting to pin him by the corner of his clothes. He's wanting it to go through David and pin him to the wall. How sad. David's just won a battle. He's come home. He's playing the harp that Saul loves to hear, but Saul allows the devil to come over him. and he slings this javelin. Again, this is the third time. But David escapes without harm that night. He fled. Saul also sent messengers unto David's house to watch him and to slay him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, if thou save not thy life tonight, tomorrow thou shalt be slain. Even his wife, she's kind of taken up for him at this point, and she's wanting to help him because she's not wanting him to die. If you don't escape tonight, tomorrow you'll be dead. So Michal let David down through a window, and he went and fled and escaped. As I read that, I thought about a story in the New Testament about Paul, where they shared that, the Jews were so hot against him. They had stirred up people and angered people about Paul, that they had to let him down in a basket over the wall of the city at night so that he could escape without harm. So David, his wife having to let him out through a window to flee and escape. Michal took an image and laid it in the bed and put a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster and covered it with a cloth. So, she made up the bed to look like David was laying in the bed. And knowing that he was already gone. And when Saul sent messengers to take David, she said, he's sick. Well, he's laying in the bed sick. And Saul sent the messengers again to see David, saying, bring him up to me in the bed that I may slay him. And when the messengers were come in, behold, there was an image in the bed with a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster. So they found out, this is just, she just stuck some pillars under the cover and made it look like he was there. And he wasn't. And Saul said unto Michal, why hast thou deceived me so, and sent away mine enemy that he is escaped? So he's questioning his own daughter about her husband. When Saul gave her to David to wife, she loved David. She loves him now. The Bible didn't say that David loved her. He wanted the older sister. But he didn't get her. Saul played a dirty trick. But the one that loved him, her father's questioning her, why have you helped him escape, my enemy? And Michal answered Saul, he said unto me, let me go, why should I kill thee? So, why are you wanting to kill my husband? I'll let him go, so he wouldn't be killed. So David fled and escaped and came to Samuel to Ramah, and told him all that Saul had done to him. And he and Samuel went and dwelt in Naioth. And it was told Saul, saying, behold, David is at Naioth in Ramah. And Saul sent messengers to take David. And when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing as appointed over them, the Spirit of God was upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. So, God's not allowing them to harm David. They began to prophesy with the others there. That was with Samuel. And when it was told Saul, he sent other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. And Saul sent messengers again, the third time, and they prophesied also. Look at how God is protecting not only David, but Samuel also. Saul knows that Samuel has anointed David. So, he's upset with both of them. Then went he also to Ramah, and came to the great well that is at Shechem, and he asked and said, Where are Samuel and David? And one said, Behold, they are at Naioth and Ramah. And he went hither to Naioth and Ramah, and the Spirit of God was upon him also, and he went on and prophesied until he came to Naioth and Ramah. So, God's taking care of all of them. All those that came up to get David, God has taken care of, even Saul. But now look what Saul does. And he stripped off his clothes also and prophesied before Samuel in like manner, and lay down naked all that day and all that night. Wherefore they say, Is Saul also among the prophets? How God works things out. God will make sure, and it'll never fail. God's will come about. It'll never fail. So, here's Saul. He's stripped his clothes off and he's laid naked all day, and he's prophesied just as the others had, so as to not bring any harm to David. So, God was working things out for David. Saul was out. Saul is done. In the next few chapters, we're going to see that Saul is really done. Anybody have anything on chapter 19? Okay, chapter 20. And David fled from Naioth in Ramah, and came and said before Jonathan, What have I done? What is mine iniquity? And what is my sin before thy father, that he seeketh my life? So David begins to question Jonathan, because he knows that Jonathan has been side by side with his father, talked with him, and he begins to ask him and question him. What have I done that he wants to kill me? What's my sin towards him? What have I done? But, he sees the greatness of David. He sees that David, God is blessing him to accomplish great things, more so than what Saul could. So Saul doesn't like that, and then we account to Saul thousands and to David 10,000s. So all this is just kind of angered Saul, so that he's letting this anger just well up in him, and it's become sin in his life, because it's brought about him wanting to kill David. And he said unto him, God forbid, thou shalt not die. Behold, my father will do nothing, either great or small, but that he will show it me. And why should my father hide this thing from me? Is it not so? So, Jonathan is trying to reassure David, no matter what my father plots to do, he's not going to hold anything back from me. And that he shares with me, I'm going to share with you. I'll let you know what you need to do to avoid him killing you. And really, up to this point, Jonathan has really helped out. So, but he's going to help even more. And David sware moreover and said, Thy father certainly knoweth that I have found grace in thine eyes. And he saith, Let not Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, there is but a step between me and death. David said, Your father knows the relationship you and I have. We're best friends. Having a best friend is somebody that'll stick with you through thick and thin. No matter what happens, if you call on them, or a lot of times whether you call on them or not, they'll be there. And, that's a true friend. And David said, your father knows that. He may hold something back from you knowing that it'd grieve you. It'll upset you. Maybe he doesn't want to upset you because he wants to kill me. Maybe he's devised another way. But then David goes on to share, there's but a step between me and death. Really, that's with every one of us. We're one heartbeat away from death. And that's it. There's but a step between us and death. And that's exactly where David knew where he was at. If you go back and read a lot of the Psalms that David wrote, he wrote a lot of those during this time when he was having to hide and run here and there. And, he was sharing about the adversaries against him. He was sharing how God just snuffed them out. He grew weary and weak, so to speak, because of having to run and hide. Him and just a few people that supported him dearly. So, he's run into a lot of troubles. But eventually he's going to be the king. Eventually he's going to be in the palace. Then said Jonathan to David, whatsoever thy soul desireth, I will even do it for thee. And David said unto Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field until the third day at even. And if thy father at all miss me, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me that he might run to Bethlehem, his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the family. And, whether that was true or not, I don't know. But David is telling him to share that with the king. But obviously, and we're going to see here in a minute, he's not run to Bethlehem. But that's what he had told Jonathan to tell Saul. Because at times, all of his closest military, all these folks came and ate with him, I guess so he could get filled in on what's going on. And if David's seat's empty, he's going to be inquiring, where's David? Why is he not here? And he tells Jonathan, just tell him, I've had to go down to Bethlehem. I have a family gathering. We have a family reunion down there. And I'm going to the family reunion. So he says, if he say thus, it is well, thy servant shall have peace. But if it be very wroth with him, then be sure that evil is determined by him. Therefore thou shalt deal kindly with thy servant. For thou hast brought thy servant into a covenant of the Lord with thee, notwithstanding, if there be in me iniquity, slay me thyself, for why shouldest thou bring me to thy father? So he says, if it's okay, then that's fine. And if it's not, and if I have committed any kind of iniquity towards your father, then he's telling Jonathan, then you slay me. You take care of it. And Jonathan said, far be it from thee, for I knew certainly that evil were determined by my father to come upon thee, then would I not tell it thee. Then said David to Jonathan, Who shall tell me of what if thy father answereth thee roughly? And Jonathan said unto him, or said unto David, Come and let us go out into the field. And they went out, both of them, into the field. And Jonathan said unto David, O Lord God of Israel, when I have sounded my father about tomorrow any time, or the third day, and behold, if there be good toward David, and I then sin not unto thee and show it thee, the Lord do so, and much more to Jonathan. But if it please my father to do thee evil, then I will show it thee and send thee away, that thou mayest go in peace, and the Lord be with thee as he hath been with my father. So even Jonathan knows David is going to be the next king. He's seen what's taken place. He's seen that his father is really losing control. God's going to take the kingdom away from him. So he says, you go out here in this field and you stay here, and I'll let you know one way or the other of what you need to do. If you need to run and hide, or if you can come on in. And he says, And thou shalt not only while yet I live show me the kindness of the Lord, that I die not, but also thou shalt not cut off thy kindness from my house forever. No, not when the Lord hath cut off the enemies of David, every one from the face of the earth. So Jonathan said, you know what? If something happens to me at my death, then you'll still show kindness towards my offspring, to my household. And David's going to. For a long time. He's going to show kindness towards the home or the house of Jonathan. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, Let the Lord even require it at the hand of David's enemies. And Jonathan caused David to swear again, because he loved him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. So again, it's sharing here how good of friends they were. No matter what, they would be there for one another. Now that's the kind of friends we need today. That's what we as Christians need to be to one another. That kind of friendship, that kind of love one towards another. Then Jonathan said to David, Tomorrow is the new moon, and thou shalt be missed, because thy seat will be empty. And when thou hast stayed 3 days, then thou shalt go down quickly and come to the place where thou didst hide thyself when the business was in hand, and shalt remain by the stone Ezel. And he's going to give him some instructions. I will shoot 3 arrows on the side thereof, as though I shot at a mark. And behold, I will send a lad, saying, Go find out the arrows. And if I expressly say unto the lad, Behold, the arrows are on this side of thee, take them, then come thou, for there's peace to thee, and no hurt, as the Lord liveth. But if I say thus unto the young man, Behold, the arrows are beyond thee, go thy way, for the Lord hath sent thee away. So, if they're on this side of the rock, and you hear me telling his armor bearer to go get the arrows, they're on this side of the rock, you'll know everything's okay. But if I say to the lad, they're on the other side of the rock, then you'll know, just get out of here, go somewhere else. Save yourself. And as touching the matter which thou and I have spoken of, behold, the Lord be between thee and me forever. So he's sharing with David how he'll let him know so that nobody will suspect. Because Jonathan is one of the chiefs in the army. So for him to go out and to do a little target practice with his bow and arrows, nobody's going to not going to suspect anything. So he could warn David without anybody knowing anything about it. And then he reminds David, don't forget what we've agreed to one with another. So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat down to meat. And the king sat upon his seat, and as at other times, even upon a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty. You notice, the king sat in his seat, a seat by the wall. You know, he didn't want to have his back to the door. He wanted to be up against the wall so nobody could come up behind him. You know, he's been evil. He's done some crazy things. You know, maybe he has the onset of dementia or whatever God's allowed to make him crazy, but he has just gone crazy. He's not going to turn his back away from the door. So he sits in a seat next to the wall. And he saw that David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought, something hath befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean. He must not be fit to come to this feast. He's not ceremonially ready to come in. So, and it came to pass on the morrow, which was the second day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said unto Jonathan his son, wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to meat, neither yesterday nor today? And Jonathan answered Saul, David earnestly asked leave of me to go to Bethlehem. Let's see, they're telling an untruth, but it's protecting David. But, you know, they didn't have to tell the story. God was still going to protect David. And he said, let me go, I pray thee, for our family hath a sacrifice in the city, and my brother, he hath commanded me to be there. And now, if I find favor in thine eyes, let me get away, I pray thee, and see my brethren. Therefore he cometh not unto the king's table. So Jonathan shares with him the story that David had come up with, and doesn't set well with Saul. Then Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan, and he said unto him, thou son of the perverse, rebellious woman, do not I know that thou hast chosen the son of Jesse to thine own confusion and unto the confusion of thy mother's nakedness? And he's pretty much sharing with Jonathan, you're a disgrace. You shouldn't even been born. You're taking the side of David, Jesse's son. And Saul doesn't like that. He so badly wants to hear that David's dead. Or he wants David brought to him where he could kill him. For as long as the son of Jesse liveth upon the ground, thou shalt not be established, nor thy kingdom. Wherefore now sendeth and fetch him to me, for he shall surely die. So he's putting it to Jonathan like, you know, you're going to be the next king, and if you don't send and get David so I can kill him, that'll never happen. But that's not going to happen anyway. Now I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but Saul and Jonathan are going to die in just a few short chapters. So, but Jonathan was never the one chosen to be the next king. God had made the choice of David. God sent Samuel down to Jesse's house. Samuel didn't even know who it was until he got there, and after he had anointed seven sons had come before him, and he told Jesse, there's none of these. Have you got any more kids? Have you got another son anywhere? And it was David down feeding the sheep and watching the sheep. Shepherd boy. And when he brought him up, he found out that's the one. So Jonathan was never even in the running for being or having the kingdom. And Jonathan answered Saul his father and said unto him, wherefore shall he be slain? What hath he done? Why is he going to be slain? What's he done to you? But it's all the things that are building up to really elevate David over Saul. And Jonathan asks him these questions. What's he done? Why do you want to kill him? And Saul cast a javelin at him to smite him. Now that's pretty bad. Trying to kill his own son. And Saul cast a javelin at him to smite him, whereby Jonathan knew that it was determined of his father to slay David. He's going to try to slay him no matter what. If he's got to kill me, he's going to get to David one way or the other, or do his best. So Jonathan arose from the table in fierce anger, and did eat no meat the second day of the month, for he was grieved for David, because his father had done him shame. You know, Jonathan's ashamed of Saul and his actions. And it came to pass in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field at the time appointed with David, and a little lad with him, which is his armor bearer, would retrieve arrows and this kind of stuff. And he said unto his lad, run, find out now the arrows which I shoot. And as the lad ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. And when the lad was come to the place of the arrow which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan cried out after the lad and said, is not the arrow beyond thee? So he's screaming it out. The arrow is beyond you. And that's the message he had shared with David, that if you hear that, you'll know to stay in hiding. And the lad knew not anything, only Jonathan and David knew the matter. Only them two knew that that was a warning. And Jonathan gave his artillery unto his lad, and said unto him, go, carry them to the city. And as soon as the lad was gone, David arose out of a place toward the south, and fell on his face to the ground, and bowed himself 3 times. And they kissed one another and wept with one another until David exceeded, or until they kind of got control of themselves. You know, David's not wanting to stay in hiding. Jonathan doesn't want him to stay in hiding. But he knows how his father is. His father's tried to kill him. He's throwing the javelin at him. But David knows that I can't stay here right now. I've got to stay in hiding. And it's because of the evil that is on Saul. You know, he knows the kingdom is really slowly slipping away. And he doesn't like that. And Jonathan said to David, go in peace, for as much as we have sworn both of us in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord be between me and thee, and between my seed and thy seed forever. And he arose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. So You know, not only did they weep together, and you know, David bowed down 3 times to the earth, you know, no doubt just thanking God for sparing him and letting him know what was taking place. And then Jonathan reminds David of the covenant that they had made. When you get your kingdom, you're not going to forget my family. You're not going to forget my seed on down the line. And David had told him he wouldn't. So he's reminding him of that covenant, and then they part ways. Anybody have anything on any of these verses?